How's it going, guys? My name is Graham and welcome to Two Left Thumbs. A while back, I did a very lengthy review of the 1995 Mortal Kombat movie, and now just last week, an equally full review of the 2021 reboot. I feel like I have a lot to say. It's something I really do want to discuss. First up, I'm a sucker for any of these that are going to directly quote the 1995 movie, which I absolutely love, so let's include these back to back. I'm going to use the 1995 movie skins as often as possible because I just love them.
The fate of billions will depend upon you. Sorry. The fate of billions is in your hands.
So stand down and let me pass.
I must prepare you for combat.
You know, you gotta admire her. When she sets her mind on something,
It's not her mind you're admiring.
it's true.
I admire Sonya's strategic mind.
It's not her mind you're admiring.
It's true.
To win your next match, use the element which brings life.
What?
I am prepared, Sub-Zero.
How do you plan to defeat me?
Using the element that brings life.
Use the element which brings life.
Taking you down will be easy.
What did Kitana tell you?
All I need is a pail of water.
I guess you knew it would end this way.
Didn't have a clue.
I guess you knew it would end this way.
I did not have a clue.
Never change, Lord Raiden.
Hopefully, that's reminded you how funny that movie actually was, especially the comedy of Lyndon Ashby doing a lot of the heavy lifting.
No more steps.
If you want to chase that nostalgia and watch a fanboy praise that movie the way it deserves, be sure to check out my in-depth retrospective and review on that movie. I'll have links to both of those down below and in the end cards. Give them a look. Back in 2006 with Mortal Kombat Armageddon, Midway seemingly attempted to wipe the slate clean by including every possible character, totaling a full roster of up to 63 playable characters. That's a heck of a send-off. The series has been rebooted and rekindled since then and is really the best it's ever been. Mortal Kombat 11 is the third of the rebooted series that followed. This time manipulation based story pays massive tribute to everything that came before, probably more meaningfully than Armageddon was capable of doing. Constantly the characters refer back to events of previous games, especially this little contained trilogy. I'm not going to focus on those internal references. There are like 10,000 of them. It's truly stunning, and if you have at all ever cared about Mortal Kombat as a video game series, it's worth getting caught up on. A logical place to start are the less than hidden references. Characters always have a little 3-line exchange when they show down. Many of these opening quips contain quotes and references aplenty. It adds a lot of personality to the game, but is also rife with references. Let's call them references. Okay, maybe not. We won't call them that. Maybe privately we still do. Versus Baraka, Jackie pulls out a Red Riding Hood joke.
Speak your joke to my face.
Grandmother, what big teeth you have.
My grandmothers were the biggest.
And Baraka, I guess, takes it as a compliment. Johnny swaps this next one up slightly.
Do you know what I am?
Cannibal humanoid underdweller?
I am death, you imp.
But a cannibalistic humanoid underground dweller is the titular Chud from the 1984 sci-fi horror B-movie.
Cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers. Chud.
Cassie Cage. As you might expect from Johnny's daughter, Cassie has a lot to say. Versus herself, she references mirror matches.
Oh, cool, mirror match. I love these casts, don't you? I know, so meta.
Which existed as a special match type in the original game. There's a direct reference to a 1956 sci-fi classic, Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
My God, pinch me. You're wide awake. Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Referencing Disney and Frozen, she calls Frost Elsa.
Hey there, Elsa. What's up?
Ugh, why does everyone call me that?
Oh, honey, let me help you.
Which is added to with Frost versus Frost, with the two of them quoting "Let it go" to one another.
The past is in the past. Then let your storm rage on. Time to test my limits and break through.
It's really unfortunate I can't include these actual songs. It just will get copyright claimed. Really regret that, and I wish it were different. Johnny and Cassie swap a few lines from the classic show tune from 1946's Broadway musical Annie Get Your Gun.
Anything you can do, I can do better.
I can do anything better than you.
No, you can't.
Cassie is aware of and mockingly quotes Scorpion's most famous catchphrase back at him.
Can I say it? Just once?
Only if you wish to suffer.
Get over here!
Get over here!
Excellent.
Get over here!
Get over here!
Cetrion refers to Test Your Might, a staple of the series dating back to the original game as a mini-game between battles.
Test your might against mine, Frost.
Kronika already has faith in me.
Her confidence has limits.
Raiden also has a quick reference to testing might when facing Liu Kang.
You do not need to test my faith, Lord Raiden.
I'm testing might, not faith.
Then I await your judgment.
Johnny informs Cetrion that Cassie got medieval on Shinnok.
Your daughter disrupted the balance.
What she did was get medieval on Shinnok.
Which thwarted my mother's will.
That as a phrase is kind of like going berserk, an act of great violence. While this phrase dates back to 1971, it wasn't really updated to have this meaning and cast into pop culture until 1994's Pulp Fiction.
I ain't through with you by a damn sight. I'ma get medieval on your ass.
That use was iconic enough that it could be a reference. Devora asks Cassie to recount her quote after defeating them in Mortal Kombat X's story mode.
You're the bug, I'm the windshield.
What was it you said last time?
You're the bug, I'm the windshield.
This one breaks windshields.
I love that it took them so long to come up with a retort. It's like George Costanza and the Jerk Store.
Hey, George. The ocean called. They're running out of shrimp.
Oh! Yes! That's what I should have said! Damn it!
Listen to the comeback. Oh, yeah? Well, the Jerk Store called. They're running out of you.
Holding on to that comeback all this time. So that one's not a reference, it's just a great payoff. Noob Saibot busts out a line from the greatest Batman movie of all time.
Your angel of death awaits.
You ain't the bat!
Who dares disturb the swarm?
Your angel of death awaits.
You will be kept waiting, devil.
Johnny screws up Aaron's name and quotes Keegan-Michael Key from his Key and Peele sketch Substitute Teacher.
Hey, Aaron, where are you? Where is Aaron right now?
That ain't how it's said.
Whatever you say, Aaron.
Gonna shoot off that 10-gallon mouth.
Jackie and Frost acknowledge that they really are just rehashes of Jax and Sub-Zero.
What do you see when you look at me?
A cheap, second-gen knockoff.
I said look at me, not you.
I'm a little surprised that in no exchanges between Frost, Jackie, or Jax, no one ever made a Jack Frost joke. With Garrus, I assume the Snazzy Award is a riff on Razzie Awards.
Keeper of the Emerald Light.
And 5-time Snazzy Award winner.
Times have changed.
It appears to be entirely a joke, as Cassie is in the Special Forces like Sonya, not an actor like Johnny. I absolutely love all of Aaron Black's old-timey phrases. I imagine the writers had a blast researching and compiling all that. But my standout favorite is a quote of Val Kilmer's Doc Holliday from 1993's Tombstone.
I didn't think you had it in you.
I'm your huckleberry.
You are an Old West enthusiast.
Yeah, I'm your huckleberry. What of it?
In 1881, Wyatt Earp shot me.
He actually starred opposite Kurt Russell, who was playing Wyatt Earp, so there's kind of one more layer to that one. He uses the line again when fighting Collector.
It was you who killed my brother.
Yeah, I'm your huckleberry. What of it?
Today I collect vengeance.
Johnny riffs on Garrus's opening line.
I have seen things you will not believe.
Quoting the next sentence from Rutger Hauer's famous Tears in the Rain monologue from Blade Runner.
I've seen things You people wouldn't believe. Attack ships on fire off the shoulder of Orion.
Attack ships on fire off the shoulder of Orion?
They skip a few lines, but Garrus ends with the final line of that quote.
Time to die.
Time to die.
Kotal Khan threatens to fight to the pain rather than to the death. This is quoting Wesley from The Princess Bride.
To the death.
No! To the pain.
I don't think I'm quite familiar with that phrase.
Kill me and I become stronger. Then I will fight you to the pain. I am not familiar with that phrase.
Jackie tells Cassie about Sean Boone.
I'm still ticked off about Sean Boone.
Prom was 10 years ago, Jackie.
You knew I liked him, Cass.
The first name might be a tribute to producer Sean Himmertick, but Boone is definitely named after series co-creator Ed Boon. Ed Boon and John Tobias love to throw references to their names all throughout the series.
Cole Young, the man that took the belt from Eddie Tobias.
And honestly, they've earned it. I love that they do that. The most obvious one being Noob Saibot. Just a little bit of a fun extra one for you there. In another great meta joke, Jackie directly rags on Frost for their introduction in Deadly Alliance.
So you're basically Lady Sub-Zero.
Our differences are deeper than gender.
Is there a wiki or something?
Where fans assumed she was a gender-swapped Sub-Zero before the game's eventual release. Here's a line that actually comes from Revelation 1:8.
Are you man or monster?
I am the Alpha and the Omega.
An egomaniac monster.
In the King James translation of the Bible, I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the ending, saith the Lord, which is, and which was, and which is to come, the Almighty. So Garrus is basically calling himself God. When fighting herself, Jackie goes for a Step Brothers reference.
What? Did we just become best friends? Yup! Do you want to go do karate in the garage? Yup!
Gotta say, love your tech. And that look is killing it. Did we just become best friends?
Are you my conscience?
Are you my conscience? Just making sure you're not slacking. A Briggs doesn't slack.
Is either just a common line, or was intended to be a reference to the classic Pinocchio?
Are you my conscience?
Who, me?
Or to this line from Dory in Finding Nemo?
Are you my conscience?
Yeah. I'm your conscience.
Jax calls her by her full name, showing that she was partially named after Jax's longtime partner, Sonya Blade.
Don't have time for a lecture.
Listen up, Jacqueline Sonya Briggs.
I hate it when you do that.
Noob Saibot saying darkness is his friend.
Being a ghost must be lonely.
The darkness is my friend.
How's that denial working for you?
Is likely a reference to Simon and Garfunkel's classic, The Sound of Silence. Hello, darkness, my old friend. There is also a bit of an untold storyline running in the game where characters are constantly asking Jackie about a mission in Fiji.
How's this gonna go? No matter what, better than Fiji. Do not bring up Fiji. Old juice spilled about the Fiji mission?
Heard all about the Uzis and umbrella drinks.
I am going to kill him.
So what the heck happened in Fiji?
God, can we not do this?
Don't keep secrets from your old man.
This goes outside of the base game characters, but RoboCop even heard of it.
I have heard about the Fiji mission.
Oh God, what were you told?
It is a great story, Jackie.
Everyone always has questions. We never really get answers. It's kind of like the running joke in Marvel about Budapest. I like things like that. I hope they never answer it. I just kind of enjoy this flirty high schoolers exchange between Jade and Katana.
So, Katana, Liu Kang, Jade, he's just a friend. I see how you look at him.
But I imagine it's more of a generic trope than a specific reference.
You know, when a woman looks at you like that, it usually means something.
I am kind of curious if this Kotal Khan exchange is meant to be a play on Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice.
Katana's scouts have found Devora.
Dawn breaks on the horizon.
By day's end, she will face justice.
Cassie jokes about Jax and Johnny being America's next top bromance.
I've learned to tolerate your father.
Ooh, America's next top bromance.
Now that's a bridge too far.
spoofing both America's Next Top Model and the Hollywood obsession with bromances. Here comes the Ruckus.
Here comes the Ruckus.
I have the technological advantage.
Maybe, but you got no soul.
Might be a reference to Wu-Tang Clan's Bring the Ruckus. When Jax matches up with himself, he quickly busts out Mr. T's famous catchphrase.
I'm pitiful!
What's your Vera like? Vera? Who's Vera? I pity you, fool.
Sonya and Jax both quote lines from the iconic poem Do Not Go Gentle Into That Good Night by Dylan Thomas.
One day, our kids will replace us.
I will not go gentle into that good night.
Let's rage against the dying of the light.
Johnny Cage. Obviously, Johnny is going to be filled with references. Many of them are just pop culture name drops the way Tony Stark might do. Johnny calls Baraka Nosferatu in this exact style of on-the-nose referencing.
Wait 1 sec, Nosferatu.
For what, Earthrealmer?
And action.
Similarly, calling Cabal Speedy.
I hear you're fast. Dead in a split second. Bring it, Speedy.
Which was probably meant to be Speedy Gonzalez. And there are others still that reference his fictional in-game series, movies, and starring roles. There are a lot of those, I'm not going to throw them all in, but there are still many that are less internal and still act as more specific, more traditional style references, like Cassie and Johnny quoting The Matrix.
They will never be as strong or as fast as you can be.
What are you trying to tell me? That I can dodge bullets?
No, Neo. I'm trying to tell you that when you're ready, you won't have to.
No one can be as strong or as fast as a Cage.
You trying to tell me I can dodge bullets?
That when you're ready, you won't have to.
Of all the gin joints, a classic line from Casablanca.
Of all the gin joints in all the towns in all the world, she walks into mine.
Of all the gin joints and all the towns.
Quit babbling, Earthrealmer.
You're not walking out of mine.
It's not paid much attention, but with Johnny constantly quoting movies, odds are this line is meant to be from Jurassic Park.
Clever girl. What's up, Frosty the Snow Chick?
Your time, Cage.
Clever girl.
And, you know, much more obviously, the low-hanging Frosty the Snowman joke. I'm too sexy for my shirt is a line from Daisho Ueda's I'm Too Sexy.
You hung with my ancient ancestors?
Many centuries ago.
Were they too sexy for their shirts too?
It's also likely intended to be an internal series reference, with Johnny Cage's debut character design not wearing a shirt. Johnny jokes about Jackie and Cassie teaming up to form his version of Charlie's Angels.
You and Castle play soldiers turned private eyes.
Working for you, our mysterious boss?
Say hello to Johnny's Angels.
When Johnny fights Johnny, they perform the same exchange the Austin Powers clones and Dr. Evil do in the second Austin Powers movie.
We are sexy. We are sexy bitches, yeah. All right, this is goddamn ridiculous.
We are sexy. We are sexy bitches. This is goddamn ridiculous.
They even have one more Austin Powers reference with Mini-Me.
I shall call him Mini-Me.
Hands down, best stand-in ever. I'm the star. You're the stand-in. Keep dreaming, Mini-Me.
It's funny that Johnny fumbles the titling of this one.
I got it. Twin cops. We'll hunt down a triad gang leader. Yes. And we'll call it double something.
But the idea of two action leads being played by the same actor is reminiscent of Van Damme's Double Impact.
There's two of them. Think about it. Van Damme. ×2. Get ready. Or Double Impact.
I wonder if that movie exists in this universe. Maybe this one was meant for the Canadians, but Double Double is a shorthand for ordering a coffee with 2 creams and 2 sugars.
I need an answer, it's killing me. What's the trouble, Double Double? Are we Johnny Cages or Johnny's Cage?
It's my understanding that that's not common outside of Canada, but I could be wrong. It's a bit of an evil twin trope at large for that evil twin to have a beard.
No beard, so not evil, right? Fight me and find out. Okay. Now I'm thinking evil.
This was made famous in the Star Trek episode Mirror Mirror with a goateed Spock. This is specifically what Community is playing off of with their whole Darkest Timeline story. Warrior princesses are all the shit right now.
Gotta strike while the iron is hot, Katana.
My life story is not for sale.
Warrior princesses are the shit right now.
Xena was famously the warrior princess, but considering when this game was released, this was probably more in reference to property revivals like Wonder Woman and She-Ra. Johnny jokes that Kotal Khan looks like he could be one of the village people.
You just need a cop, a sailor, and a cowboy.
For what, Johnny Cage?
Only the greatest disco reboot ever.
I generally just love that this movie star character acknowledges and mocks the use of MacGuffins within this universe he's in.
Your Bluestone amulet stopped cracking?
It disappeared in the time merger.
So much for that, MacGuffin.
And his quick dig about wasting a cinematic universe is obviously a play on that being the hottest Hollywood movie trend for the last decade, starting with the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Come on merch alone, you'll be killing it.
The Shirai Ryu are not for sale.
Way to waste a cinematic universe.
I'm sure if the studios have their way, we're gonna have a Mortal Kombat cinematic universe in no time. If the reboot does well enough, we'll probably have a Scorpion or Sub-Zero origin movie, a couple of sequels, maybe some other side character stories, and then some big Avengers level team up. But I'm not sure if that movie really made enough noise at the box office or the home viewing to really warrant that. We can discuss further on that movie review. What a perfect plug and segue. Johnny quotes Hall and Oates' Man-Eater.
So I'm guessing you want to chew me up.
And spit out your bones, Cage.
Watch out, she's a man-eater.
And it completely and understandably goes over Scarlett's head. Reaching for more classic cinema, Johnny quotes the famous last words spoken by Clark Gable in Gone with the Wind.
Where shall I go? What shall I do?
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
What's that, Scarlett?
The gods as my witness. I'll never go thirsty again.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
How cultured. There's an added joke there that Johnny is speaking to Scarlett, Clark Gable would have been speaking to Scarlett O'Hara. When facing himself, Cabal mixes together a pair of Forrest Gump quotes.
My mom always said life was like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna get.
Mama always said life's like an armed robbery. You never know who you're gonna kill. Run, Cabal, run.
I love the dig at Movado.
Movado, is that you? I'm you, from an alternate timeline. Yeah, right. That's what Movado would say.
A total throwaway rehash of a character who was basically just worse Cabal and was only playable in like 2.5 games. Less of a movie quote, Cabal throws out a movie name.
Life in jail is too slow.
The White Lotus can redeem you.
I'd rather live free or die hard.
He uses this once more against Scorpion, but it gets a little twist on it.
I see your future, Scorpion.
What future can a hired thug see?
You're gonna burn fast and die hard.
Noob Cybot goes for a Near Iron Islanders quote.
What is dead may never die.
What is dead may never die.
Gonna put you down for good.
What is dead cannot die.
Poetic, but bullshit.
While very similar, maybe that one wasn't actually intentional. I had never heard this before, and it's more of a phrase than a reference.
Oh, let's make nice, sweetie.
That would be an epic disaster.
Ah, don't be such a Cassandra.
But the Cassandra metaphor, also known as Cassandra Syndrome or Cassandra Complex, relates to a person whose valid warnings are disbelieved by others, which is something dating back to Greek mythology. Captain Kangaroo was a children's television series.
You don't have the balls to kill me.
Don't need 'em, Captain Kangaroo.
Come on then, Sonya 2.
Funnily enough, it was actually an American series and has nothing to do with Australia. Versus Jade, I could eat a peach for hours.
Oh, don't you just look peachy?
Save your slobber, dog.
I could eat a peach for hours.
Comes from Nicolas Cage in the bizarre, classic John Woo action film Face Off.
You know, I can eat a peach for hours.
Maybe one of the most uncomfortable lines ever spoken in cinema. Kano's mantra comes from a Run the Jewels song, Lie, Cheat, Steal.
You monks have mantras, right?
Do you have one, Kano?
Lie, cheat, steal, kill, win.
Versus Katana, Cetrion goes for a Darth Vader-like quote, although not word for word.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
I was right, doubting the Elder Gods.
Your lack of faith disturbs me.
As does your obedience to Kronika.
Although that's kind of funny considering Star Wars itself has one of the most misquoted movie lines in history.
He told me you killed him. No. I am your father.
Johnny's Edenian candidate is likely meant to be a play on the Manchurian candidate.
Now what, Earthrealmer?
Johnny Cage is the Edenian candidate.
By the gods, no.
Kotal Khan, Oceans Rise, Empires Fall is a line sung by King George III in the Broadway musical Hamilton.
Oceans rise, empires fall.
Oceans rise, empires fall. Mine will never die. You will not be back.
Sonya has maybe been spending a bit too much time with Johnny, making a meta-Hollywood joke that goes over Kotal's head.
You are not yet a general.
Yeah, I'm the prequel that didn't stink.
A prequel, Sonya Blade?
Kung Lao rags on Baraka's toothy grin, using lyrics from Louis Armstrong's When You're Smiling.
Smile and the realms smile with you.
I'll smile when you swing from a meat hook.
Not going to happen, Baraka.
He shows off his confidence with something a little self-referential for this series.
How are those arms working out?
Still getting the hang of them.
Then mine will be a flawless victory.
I always assumed bringing a knife to a gunfight was a phrase that's existed for centuries.
Fighting you is beneath me.
I can bloody hold me own.
You brought a knife to a hat fight.
As best I can find, it originated in the 1987 film The Untouchables.
Brings a knife to a gunfight.
You know, Kung Lao has his own spin on it. This phrase versus Noob Saibot feels very Christmas Carol-y.
A ghost from Mortal Kombat past.
The fight remains unfinished.
I hate to leave loose ends.
Always the cultured one, Kung Lao is quoting Shakespeare with "A light heart lives long."
A light heart lives long.
But a cold heart feels no pain.
Are you certain of that?
From Love's Labor's Lost. Cassie, seemingly taking after Johnny, drops the film title Kung Fu Hustle into her banter with Liu Kang.
You seem too eager.
Let's get our Kung Fu Hustle on.
A little patience could save your life.
Liu and Raiden swap the names of Mortal Kombat 5, 6, and 7.
Are we the Deadly Alliance?
That is Kronika's deception.
Or a recipe for Armageddon.
Cassie accuses Noob's prose of being very Andrew Lloyd Webber-like.
You will drown in eternal night.
How Andrew Lloyd whatever of you.
You will sing of pain for me.
Who is known for writing The Phantom of the Opera. Captain Emo is possibly a generic insult, or it's meant to be a twist on Michael Jackson's Captain EO.
No one will miss you, Cage.
I got millions of fans, Captain Emo.
They will forget quickly.
Although the character is somewhat the opposite of Emo, so I think it was another generic insult. When Noob confronts himself, they make a Voldemort joke, as well as quoting the title of a Harry Potter book.
Who are you, Ghost? You shall not be named. Return to your deathly hollow.
Just as a cool bit of continuity, Noob seems to resent that his brother took his name, Sub-Zero.
Still trading on my name.
A name you forsook long ago.
Not willingly.
And another time, throwing his old name, Tundra, in his face.
Tundra, how you have grown.
That was a lifetime ago.
Yet you remain a novice.
We also learn in another exchange that Noob was not the first to use the name regardless. It actually belongs to their grandfather.
I disown you in every way.
Then disown my name, Sub-Zero.
The name was grandfather's first.
Raiden and Noob seem to joke about the chronology and canon story of Mortal Kombat mythology's Sub-Zero.
You stole Shinnok's amulet for Quan Chi.
I live from another life.
Spare me your riddles, Bihan.
A prequel game that existed to expand and retcon series lore. It makes sense that when fighting Scarlet, Raiden would reference blood and thunder.
Come to surrender, Scarlet.
I will take your life.
Your blood and thunder do not awe me.
This comes from an oath made by warriors before entering battle in medieval times. Its first printed use was in the poem Don Juan by Lorne Byron in the early 1800s. O blood and thunder, and O blood and wounds. These are but vulgar oaths. Raiden and Sub-Zero discuss their shared dream of fighting against the likes of Batman and Superman.
I dreamt of a strange and unjust world.
With a dark knight and a caped wonder.
How could you know my dream?
I at first thought this was meant to be Mortal Kombat vs. DC Universe, but it's more likely the recent Injustice 2, also from NetherRealm Studios, which features Sub-Zero and Raiden as DLC additions. This is especially built on with the claim of it being unjust.
I dreamt of a strange and unjust world.
We are stranded in this realm, Raiden.
I believe our combat brought us here.
Then perhaps combat will take us home.
Against Scorpion, Jackie appears to be quoting the Beyoncé song.
You plan to marry my children.
Takeda got smart and put a ring on it.
First, prove you are worthy.
I thought that was more of a generic phrase, but it wasn't really in use before her single ladies hit. All in the reflexes.
How did you defeat Shinnok?
Yeah, it's all in the reflexes.
Show me, Cage.
A reference to Kurt Russell's line taking down the bad guy at the end of Big Trouble in Little China.
Goodbye, Mr. Burton. It's all in the reflexes.
Apparently Johnny is a big fan of this film, as he and Liu Kang swap some lines that match up with a few exchanges from Jack and Wang throughout that movie.
Nothing or double. God bless you.
Nothing or double. God bless you!
My mind and my spirit are as one.
My mind and my spirits are as one.
Then let's shake the pillars of heaven.
We really shook the pillars of heaven, didn't we, Wang?
At the very least, we know the creators of the Mortal Kombat series are big fans, with it being reported that original design for Shang Tsung was actually based on this very same villain. Versus Shao Kahn, Cassie reaches for a rather outdated Skyrim reference.
Prostrate yourself, Earthrealmer.
Can't. Took an arrow to the knee.
I will suffer no excuses.
Even when the game was first entering development, let alone released, this would have been a dated reference.
I used to be an adventurer like you. Then I took an arrow in the knee.
An oldie but a goodie, I suppose. In another intro, Cassie opts for the classic James Bond style introduction.
I admire your luck, Mr.
Bond. James Bond.
You're one of Raiden's champions?
Name's Cage. Cassie Cage.
The same woman who fought Shinnok.
Shao Kahn tells Collector that they will make Outworld great again.
For 25 years, you've remained loyal.
You are the one true Khan.
Let us make Outworld great again.
Obviously, this has been recently popularized by Trump, but it was first a prominent slogan used by Reagan, with technically even deeper roots than that. In fact, Shao Kahn's version is a little closer to Reagan's. I wonder if he has plans to distribute any MOGA hats. Johnny follows up Scarlet's hot-blooded comment by spinning it into lyrics from Foreigner's Hot Blooded.
The hot-blooded Johnny Cage.
Got a fever burning inside of me.
The only cure is killing you.
The only cure feels a little bit more cowbell-y.
Guess what? I got a fever. And the only prescription is more cowbell.
But I don't think it was intended to be. It's not quite on the nose enough. When fighting herself, blood of my blood is a difficult to track phrase.
You are blood of my blood. We are one and the same. Together, we will bleed Outworld.
But it's something that has been most prominently featured in Game of Thrones. With the timing of all this, that's most likely where they were going with it. Scarlet mentions blood in literally every intro of hers.
Your blood is holy. Your blood reeks of conflict. I need a warrior's blood. Ah, the perfect blood donor. You kept me from Jade's blood.
You know, it's kind of her thing. But just something funny and extra I wanted to share, none of it holds a candle to the Blood Mage's blood rant in Warcraft 3.
My blood cries out for the vengeance of my people's blood, which can only be repaid with at least twice as much blood, or maybe 3 times as much blood. Like if you went to hell, and it was full of blood, and that blood was on fire, and it was raining blood, and maybe that would be enough blood. But probably not.
I think we have a #1 blood fanatic there still. Through Sonya's dialogue with Cassie, they implant a quick Bob Dylan reference.
So how are things with you and Bob?
For the last time, his name is Dylan.
Why learn his name if he's not sticking around?
Ed Boon is a known Bob Dylan fan, often quoting "the times they are a-changin'," which is a fairly strong motif for Mortal Kombat 11. I'm a little suspicious that Sonya's "bigger boot" line was meant to be a play on "bigger boat" from Jaws.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
You ready to get crushed by my heel?
You cannot crush the entire swarm.
Think I'll need a bigger boot.
There's no school like the old school.
There's no school like the old school.
Like to think I've done it one better.
Every generation does.
It can be heard in both The Incredibles,
Yeah? No school like the old school.
and Rock'n'Rolla.
Bollocks. There's no school like the old school.
Maybe more, those are the ones I know. I doubt it was meant to reference either of those. Might just be a stylish quote with convergent origins. Jax says he's been ready since 1993.
Ready, Jax?
Since 1993.
And you still got it.
He's quite clearly older than being in his 20s, although with the whole time manipulation plot, I don't know exactly the timeline here. Maybe that would be his birth year in this canon. But it is also directly a reference to his character debut with the release of Mortal Kombat 2 in 1993. Quoting songs as often as movies, Johnny goes for "You've lost that lovin' feelin' from the Righteous Brothers."
Cut the romantic crap, Cage.
You've lost that loving feeling?
Lost it? Never had it.
When Harry Met Sally is a classic tale of two characters who are continually drawn through their lives in a romantic entangle.
I'm definitely not your Sally.
I'm your Harry, and you know it.
I haven't even seen the movie.
No, not the face. Does feel very Johnny-esque.
You are begging to be punched in the face.
No, not the face.
Reverse psychology at its best.
But it's also a common enough line that it actually qualifies as a trope at this point. So you can't really pin that on anything specific. Sonya shrugs off Raiden's comment of loyalty by instead beginning the American Pledge of Allegiance.
Made some bad calls, Raiden.
Can I still expect your loyalty?
I pledge allegiance to the flag.
Not a reference exactly, but maybe unfamiliar to non-Western players, I figured I'd slide it in. Trust but verify was a Russian phrase, ironically popularized by Ronald Reagan.
I'm keeping an eye on your clan.
Trust but verify.
Just like the Gipper said.
He was sometimes known as the Gipper after his portrayal of George the Gipper Gipp in 1940's Newt Rockney All-American. Sonya's comment about breaking boards is a reference to the old Test Your Might minigames.
Name a contest. I'll beat you in it. Mortal Kombat. Whatever happened to breaking boards?
Sonya vs. Sonya has the opening line of Joan Jett's Bad Reputation.
Your Hollywood fling's making us look bad. I don't give a damn about my reputation. Then it's game on, mirror match.
It makes sense while discussing Johnny, as he is always quoting songs. And they also reference the concept of mirror matches from Mortal Kombat 1. I noticed Sub-Zero really likes to quote old proverbs. Other characters do this on occasion, but he brings it up more often.
Why not fight for Earthrealm?
Drakes are stronger in Outworld.
A fool and his vice are soon departed.
A fool and his money are soon departed dates back about 500 years.
Your combat must be perfected.
How do you define perfection?
Clear as ice, clean as jade.
Clear as ice, clean as jade is an extremely old Chinese idiom. It basically means spotless, something that's perfected.
Are you prepared to face a Lin Kuei?
As long as the implants don't glitch.
A poor craftsman blames his tools.
A poor tradesman always blames his tools is one that dates way back and has existed in many forms in many languages. I really love Johnny's Grandmaster gag.
Call me Grandmaster.
Grandmaster Blueberry Ice.
Even a child has more discipline.
I was really digging around assuming this one was a reference. It seems like it might not be. That's just his own unique cutesy name he gave. And one thing I will tease from the expanded game, the DLCs, when the Joker fights Sub-Zero, there's a bit of an internal reference there to this line.
Grandmaster Blueberry Ice, eh?
Only Johnny Cage may use that name and live.
You're hardly intimidating, Snow Cone.
It makes it feel like, this cute name that Sub-Zero might actually kind of enjoy. I thought if that one was stretched across 2 videos, it might kind of lose its effect. So there is every opening dialogue reference within the base game of Mortal Kombat 11. It is my goal to make you all Mortal Kombat fans, whether that be video games, movies, anything else. So, if you're into this, do that whole like and comment thing. Let me know that you want to see more. It's my hope that I can convince you that the variety content that I want to make for this channel is worth checking out. If you like Easter eggs and games, flash game histories, maybe there's room for movie reviews for you as well. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you to patrons of the channel. We got all their sexy names scrolling in the corner there. What a bunch of beauties. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon.